What's up? Welcome into this Sunday night edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm Mike Renner, as always, joined today by John Breech, fellow CBS NFL analyst, and we're going to be breaking down all things NFL Wildcard Weekend. Our 6 points today. We got the 5 games to get through, and at the end, we'll touch on Mike Vrabel, the new head coach of the New England Patriots. After that, we're going to go for 2 with a couple takes and then give a few takes on that Vikings-Rams game getting moved to Arizona at the end of the show. So let's get right into it, though. It was tame, Breech. It was kind of a tame wildcard weekend until Commanders-Bucs. That was a wild one.
Renner, I'll be honest, up until about 2 hours ago, I thought we were going to come on tonight and talk about what we had for dinner over the weekend, maybe talk about the college football playoff. I didn't know what we were going to talk about because it was so tame. Most of the games were boring. And then, like you said, Commanders-Buccaneers zoomed in and was one of the most entertaining wildcard games that we've seen in a couple years. So that absolutely saved the day. Thank you, Jaden Daniels. Thank you, Zane Gonzalez. My God, way to end that thing in drama. Thank you to Dan Quinn. Just thank you to everyone in Washington.
And to Zane Gonzalez's hair. It looked great. I love the zoom in on him. And I thought for sure after that he was going to miss it. That was pure nervous energy. I've been there before where you don't know what to do. So you fix your hair a zillion times because you know the camera's on you. You know everyone's looking at you. And he clipped it right off the pole. But that whole last 12 minutes of that game from the goal line stand that the Buccaneers had on was basically just like must-see TV. You had so much good stuff happening that from, again, the goal line stand to the botched jet sweep, which I saw people questioning. I don't know your thoughts on that, but there was still enough time left in that game. You still got the full playbook open. A jet sweep to the Tampa Bay Bucs is not like a wild play to call in that situation. That's not getting too cute. That's not, like handing it off to an offensive lineman at the goal line, right? That's just a normal play out of the playbook that Baker Mayfield makes not 9 times out of 10, like 99 times out of 100, right? He's never done that this season. So I didn't think that was the big deal. To me, though, 2 operation problems on the Bucs offense at the end. Not only that, but then you have the botched timing between the center snapping early on a 3rd down handoff that goes to Bucky Irving. That gets stopped. They kick a field goal there. They never get the ball back. Those 2 plays for the Tampa Bay Bucs, that's why you lost. Plain and simple. Those are equally matched teams outside of those 2 plays, in my opinion. But the 2 bad plays of the game both happened to Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild that you have an NFL playoff game come down to 2 mistakes that you see in training camp. These are things you practice in training camp, so this doesn't happen during the season. And you rarely see an NFL team do this once in a game in an entire season. So to have it twice in a playoff game, it was just like the Buccaneers melting under the pressure. I don't even know what you say. If you're Todd Bowles, if you're Baker Mayfield, because it's not like you're going to walk out of this game feeling like you played better, like you outplayed Washington. And then you stare at, obviously, the center. It looked like he obviously snapped it early, and there's nothing you can do there because when that play happened, I actually thought somebody jumped off sides. And then you see the replay, and then you're thinking, oh, my God, he just snapped it on his own without even knowing what was going on just the biggest play of the game for Tampa Bay. And so I think that's just one of those ones you're going to beat yourself up over that all offseason because those are high school mistakes. You can't have those.
Rookie center, Graham Barton, making a rookie mistake on the biggest stage, flat out call it what it is. That's unfortunate for him. The hard count, you heard Baker giving a turbo set, and that's when he snapped it. The rest of the offensive line knew it wasn't supposed to be snapped because he didn't even – I thought Baker was going to fumble because he stood there for a split second with the ball in his hand thinking what do I go from here? Is this live? And then he hands it to Bucky, and then Bucky's got it out like a loaf of bread in his hand or like something, a prize he just won. He's holding it out in the air. I was like, whew, they actually got away with that to not fumble and only have it be a field goal, but then have to just give the tip of the cap to Jaden Daniels and what he did. And a rookie. I talk about rookie mistakes from Graham Barton. That guy didn't make a single rookie mistake all game. Probably the biggest rookie mistakes he made was getting killed on the sideline a few times, taking some big shots that he really didn't need to. But there were no rookie mistakes from him. Really, the worst play he had was early in that fourth down or on that goal line stand that they didn't end up converting. He just had a turn down to, one of their backup tight ends whose name's eluding me right now. Guy was open. I believe it was Bates, their backup tight end. He was open for a second. I get why he turned it down. There's D lineman in the throwing lane. I think even after the lineman cleared, he was still open and he put it at his feet. But if that's your worst play all game from rookie quarterback, Commanders are going to be in good hands going forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting watching Jaden Daniels play this game. It was kind of like you just said, where he didn't make a mistake. I kept waiting for him to make a mistake. Rookie quarterbacks, they melt down in the playoffs. That's just what happens. There is no pressure like this pressure. Everybody's playing faster. You think it's faster in the regular season. Well, now everything's sped up, and now you have to process everything faster, and it is just everyone just melts down. And Jaden Daniels did not do that at all. It was big play after big play after big play. You look at the fourth quarter, throws for 57 yards and a touchdown. They probably should have gotten that pass interference call on the fourth down where they failed. And you look at all their possessions, there was not a single time in the second half where I thought Tampa Bay was going to stop Washington. I think they scored on every single possession except for that fourth down failure that probably should have been a pass interference. And so it's just amazing what this offense looks like. It's amazing that Dan Quinn, I get going for on fourth down all the time, but I would be crossing my fingers with my lucky rabbit's foot if I'm going for it on fourth down all the time with a rookie quarterback. It's one thing where you have a veteran quarterback in Detroit. Dan Campbell trusts Jared Goff implicitly. You have a rookie quarterback. You don't know what's going to happen, but obviously Jaden Daniels has proven all season he can do it. He did it again on Sunday night. He is fun to watch. And man, Renner, are we going to see a rookie quarterback into the Super Bowl for the first time, or am I just getting way ahead of myself?
I think you might be getting way ahead of yourself because they're not the only team that look good in the NFC. But, gosh, I don't know. With when Jaden's unleashed as a runner, because in this game he led the Commanders 36 rushing yards and had opportunities for even more in that game. Or just like it just made him so dynamic and so difficult to defend that it felt like the Bucs had to play almost a perfect game to stop them the way they did. They had so many big stops and so many just like blown mistakes on their offensive line where Kalijah Cansey's in the backfield before anyone knows it, just to hold them to 23 points. And it's still not good enough. Cansey's free on that last play, and Daniel still scrambles for a first down to ice it. So, yeah, I would be scared to face this team, and more so, I'm scared to face this team for the next 3 years because they're only going to put more around them. They only have more cap space going forward. That this feels like the start of something really special if you're a Commanders fan, and truly could be something, like you said, really special even this year. I had one last note, though, that I want to touch on. I did not expect to see Deion Jones making goal line pass breakups and Shaq Barrett making tackles out in space for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2025. Deion Jones, that name came out of nowhere to me. He didn't play a snap in the regular season, this guy. That was incredible.
Well, and for Shaq Barrett to be retired and then decide, you know what, I'm going to unretire, force the Dolphins to cut me so I can go sign in Tampa Bay and play in a playoff game, and then to actually be on the field and make several plays was pretty wild to see that. But, good on Shaq Barrett for weaseling his way out of Miami and getting into a playoff game.
Shame we didn't get to see more of them, but Commanders, great W. Great to see that franchise finally having some success after long
first playoff win since 2005, Renner. Do you remember where you were the last time the Commanders won a playoff game?
I do not. I was in high school. I was actually just starting high school, would have been where I was. So no clue. I don't even remember who they played in that one. What was
I don't remember either.
I don't remember. All right, let's get to the second game of Sunday. Eagles.
Oh, Packers. It was Tampa Bay. I do remember. Their last playoff win was against Tampa Bay.
Tough. Yeah,
crazy.
Got them once again. All right, Eagles, Packers. Eagles win, going away 22-10. This one felt like, to me, it felt like when the horse breaks its leg on the track at horse races, and they just got to you don't want to do it, but you just got to put it out of its misery. That was this Packer season. It was like, just put it out of its misery at this point. We knew we weren't good enough. We saw it every single time they faced one of the best teams in the NFL, whether it was week 1 against the Eagles, whether it was both games against the Lions, whether it was both games against the Vikings. It was like, we knew they did not have the horses to compete this year. And this one was just more evidence of that. And now they made the more mistakes too. And that seemingly was the problem in every single time. It seemed like every time they faced one of those bigger teams, it was them making the bad turnovers. It was them making the costly penalties. And that was that once again. But then also, like, by the end of this game, they didn't have their top 3 wide receivers. They didn't have their starting running back. They didn't have their starting left guard. They didn't have their starting center. It was like, what were we going to do? It was just time for this Packers season to be over. But the Eagles were quite obviously the better team in that game, in my opinion, even if it was close towards the end.
Hey, look, you're the Packers guy. I'm not sure to have been able to watch this if I was a Packers guy or Packers fan. It was just painful. I mean, I saw you on Twitter just pointing out how many people they were missing, not just Christian Watson. We saw Romeo Doubs go down. We saw it just seemed like they were suffering a new injury every other play. But despite that, the Eagles could not put this game away. I mean, to me, it felt like the end of Talladega Nights when Ricky Bobby and they crashed their car, and then Jean Garrard and Ricky Bobby both get out of the car and they're beating each other up to get to the finish line. Like, that's what the Eagles and Packers were doing. It's just the Eagles should have won this game probably 47-10, but they could not get out of their own way. And the Packers were staying alive. In the second half, it was just like the Packers could still somehow miraculously win this game, even though they have no business and half the team's injured, and they probably have to forfeit in the divisional round because they have so many injuries. But for their defense to kind of keep them in this game, and that may have a lot to do with, I was not impressed with how Jalen Hurts played. And again, he just took 2 weeks off from a concussion, might have been a little rusty. So I'm not going to say, hey, the Eagles can't win in the divisional round. But I just thought the Eagles offense outside of Saquon Barkley didn't look that great. And so even though the Packers were beat up, this was a game until the fourth quarter.
Yeah, if I'm an Eagles fan, I am terrified that we just got Carson Wentz yet again, in terms of we overpaid a quarterback because the situation around him was perfect and he had a little bit of a wrinkle to his game that the league didn't quite know how to adjust for. And now that they do, it's like half his dropbacks, he's down there 5 seconds after, protection's great, and it ends with him just sprinting to the sideline and throwing the ball away. It's like I haven't gone and watched the All-22 because it's not out yet, but I know early on this season there were plays to be had, and I've said that I do not love on numerous occasions how Kellen Moore schemes up this offense. But that being said, it's like I know what these Packers corners look like, and they're not playing lockdown coverage against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They're just not. And so 131 passing yards against that team, and a lot of those were on like, a swing screen to Dallas Goedert where he just breaks a tackle and goes out. Like, he was not playing the quarterback position at any modicum of a Super Bowl caliber level. If that's how they look against the Packers defense, I am worried about this Minnesota Vikings team going forward. Yikes. Philadelphia Eagles team going forward. I was ready to say against a defense like the Minnesota Vikings going forward, just because you're going to have to pass at some point. I think someone's going to be able to take away the run. There are better run defenses than the Green Bay Packers out there. And when that's the case, I don't know. He didn't show it today, unfortunately.
This game started off, I felt like, with a little bit of controversy with Keyshawn Nixon fumbling on the kickoff. And I thought the overhead view of that was so bizarre because it looked like he's sitting on the ground, grabbed it, and it should have just been play over. I don't care who comes up with the ball at that point because he's laying on the ground with the football. Yeah. And then obviously the Eagles were given the football, and then they scored a touchdown like 2 plays later, and it was over after that. I mean, the biggest play of the game was the opening kickoff, which you rarely ever see in any NFL game. And so it was weird to have that happen. It just felt like a really weird game all around. Jordan Love's 3 interceptions where it just felt like he thought, I've got to do something. He just started pressing too much because everybody's getting injured, and he feels like he has to make a big splash play to get the team back in it when they didn't necessarily have to do that. Just kind of keep giving the ball to Josh Jacobs. He played well, but like you said, it's probably for the best the Packers season's over because this team, as it was built with all these injuries, probably was not going to be winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that opening kickoff. I mean, I get that the Eagles came up with it and that they almost never overturn those sort of pile plays because, of what goes on, like who comes out with it matters. And that, like, Nixon did fumble, and you can't feel too, strongly that they got screwed when you did fumble the opening kickoff, regardless of whether you recovered it. But like, There were two hands in a ball. If this was judging who caught it, if this was a pass and we had that angle, they 1000% give that to the Green Bay Packers, right? Like, there's no even debate here. Even if they called it Eagles ball on the football field, I think they would have given that to the Packers, right? Or am I crazy?
I feel like they would have gone with whatever was called on the field. So if they had said,
so if that was like a pass and that was the angle we had on the pass, you think they would have called still Eagles ball on that? They would have gone with that.
I just don't think they would have overturned it either way. I don't know. It was such a weird situation to start the game off with. That's it.
I will echo your sentiments though on Love, and it's been my biggest criticism of him. And I think he does some things great about the quarterback position, but he has a knack for pressing when they're behind in a way that he just doesn't need to. That's irresponsible, in my opinion. And you see that with the 3 interceptions in this one. Like, when they have to come from behind, he's capable of doing it, but he'll do this thing where he does these like back shoulder, just heave it up, or not back shoulder, back foot, heave it up down the football field, like really just throw into windows where he didn't need to at that point in time. And I think in this game, you saw that on a couple of occasions, but the last one I can forgive. Like, that was truly you needed to do it. They were dead in the water at that point. But first two, I don't know. Jordan Love, far from a banner game from him. But like, once you lose your top 3 wide receivers, shoot, good luck against that Eagles defense. You got to give credit to them too, because that unit is a house on the Eagles side.
Let me ask you this real quick, Renner. So you have Jordan Love. The last 2 times we've seen him in a postseason game, obviously last season against the 49ers in that 24-21 loss, he threw 2 interceptions in the second half of that game. So he now has 5 interceptions in his last 6 quarters of playoff football. Does that leave a bad taste in your mouth, or is it kind of this time around, he didn't have anybody to throw the ball to, I'm going to let this one go, let's move on to next season?
It leaves a bad taste in my mouth for sure, but it's like, this is the hand you're dealt, right? Like, you have you've hitched your wagon to Jordan Love. And so now you have to find a way to win with it. And why I said all offseason, I was like, their receivers are not reliable enough. They could be good enough 1 game here, 2 games. They are not reliable enough week in and week out to be a championship team. I just didn't think this receiving core, and I know everyone was in love with it because they had second half of last year and they were all so young. And so you project like this next step, but I saw them all in college, and I saw them like at their best in college, and none of them had good ball skills. And to me, a trait that goes from college to the NFL that rarely changes a ton. Now, you can improve a little bit, but you don't go from dropping over 10% of your passes that were catchable the way Christian Watson did, the way Dontavion Wicks did, the way Luke Musgrave did at the collegiate level, to then all of a sudden being Larry Fitzgerald, right? Larry Fitzgerald didn't drop balls when he was like 6 years old, and he still didn't drop balls when he got to the NFL. Some of that is just how you track the ball and how consistently you can make those plays at the catch point then. And they unfortunately they don't have a single guy I trust in that regard. They don't have a Drake London-esque sort of guy who you just know is coming down with it in those sort of situations. So Jordan Love likes to throw those passes too, is the problem. And you see it on display week in and week out that when he does throw those, more often than not, Pack receivers aren't coming down with it. So,
Renner, are you saying you want your team to go out and trade for Tyreek Hill? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, that's not the answer in my opinion. Even though he's the answer for a lot of things, I don't think he's the answer to this question for a lot of teams. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. After that, going to get to the final 3 games of Wildcard Weekend, as well as Mike Vrabel, the new head coach of the New England Patriots. Right after this. Now it's time for the Captain of the Week, brought to you by Captain Morgan, the official spiced rum of the NFL. In honor of Super Bowl 59, Captain Morgan is spicing things up in a way you don't want to miss. Stay tuned for more info, because this week's Captain of Wildcard Weekend is Derek Stingley Jr., the 3rd-year cornerback for the Houston Texans. He put on a show Saturday afternoon against Los Angeles Chargers. He was targeted 10 times, allowed only 5 catches for 62 yards, had a pass breakup. More importantly, 2 big interceptions. That now gives him 12 since the start of last season. The ball hawk that was so good as a freshman at LSU, well, he's turned into one of the best corners in the NFL. Was he a first-team All-Pro, Breech? I think he was, right?
I think so. This
just
just came out Friday. My head's fuzzy on.
Either way, a captain of the week performance for the Houston Texans in a big win for them over the Los Angeles Chargers in the Wildcard Weekend. That was the captain of the week, brought to you by Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL. This Super Bowl 59, Captain Morgan is calling on crews across America to gear up for something big. If you love hurricanes, daiquiris, really any delicious rum cocktail, you'll want to follow the captain and keep your eye on NOLA's most iconic street the week of the Super Bowl. Visit followthecaptain.com to begin your adventure. All right, Bills-Broncos, the Sunday 1 p.m. game. I thought it was going to be a good one early on. I was like, this is what we came for. First drive, Bo Nix, deep dig, bomb right after that. I'm like, fireworks. I want 35-30. I want a different game than what we saw objectively on Saturday. Turned out that was it. That was the last time the Broncos would get a point on the scoreboard. The Bills scored 31 unanswered in that one as they kind of showed Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos team who's boss.
This game, Mike, I thought was the most fascinating game of the weekend. Obviously not necessarily exciting, but obviously the score says this was a blowout, 31-7. But it was 10-7 at halftime, and it would have been 10-10 if Will Lutz didn't miss a field goal off the upright, which, by the way, fun fact, no opposing kickers ever made a 50-yard field goal in Buffalo in the playoffs, 50 yards or longer, ever in NFL history. So that is your fun fact for the day. Fun fact number 2, Bo Nix's touchdown pass that you mentioned to Troy Franklin is the only rookie-to-rookie touchdown pass in NFL playoff history. There's never been one before that. Is that unbelievable?
It actually is unbelievable. I guess there haven't been that many rookies make the playoffs, though. There's only like a handful in NFL history. So I guess that would be why, but that is crazy.
Yeah, I guess. And then if you have another rookie, you're usually not good if you have a rookie receiver, rookie quarterback. So I think my issue with this game is that I thought Sean Payton got so out-coached that this, you know how Sean Payton felt about Russell Wilson last year, just do whatever to get him out of here. That's how I felt watching Sean Payton this game. Like, what are you doing, Sean? This is just, you are such a better coach than this. I mean, we saw the fake punt in the first quarter, but to me, it seemed like he didn't trust Bo Nix. I mean, this game was 10-7 at halftime. Bo Nix was 8-12 for 102 yards in the first half. 2 of those incompletions were drop passes. So it should have been 10-12 for, say, 125. So he did well. And the Broncos lost this game in the third quarter, first 2 possessions. They went 3 and out on their first possession. They went 3 and out on their second possession. You know what they did on both of those drives? They went run, third and long pass, run, third and long pass when they couldn't run the ball at all. And so if you give Bo Nix a chance, he's obviously not Josh Allen, but he's got the legs. Let him be your guy that runs the ball. Let him create for you and let him do what he did to kind of get you this far. So, look, I get that your head coach are a little leery of putting that kind of pressure on your rookie quarterback in the playoffs, but I just felt like this game could have been closer if Payton had done a better job of calling the offense in the second half.
I think he had much too high expectations for his defense. He called a game like it was going to end up 13-17, right? Like it was going to be one more score, and that was it for the Broncos offense, and that was going to decide it, which is just so unrealistic when you're playing Josh Allen in the playoffs at home. It is. I don't care how good your defense is. And yeah, the Broncos defense is great, but Joe Brady is one of the best play callers in the NFL, and he really flexed his muscles in that second half. I thought they had a great game plan coming out of halftime, and I think you really saw the talent efficiency as well for this Denver Broncos offense, whether it was drop passes. I think they had 4 in that game, or whether it was just the lack of explosion at running back. Javonte Williams, guy can break tackles left and right, but he had some windows to get through, and he just didn't have it. You saw when Cook got the ball versus when Williams got the ball. and they had similar creases. It felt like Cook was gone. Williams was getting his ankles clipped and 5 or 6 yard gain. They didn't have a run longer than 7 yards from their running back position all game long, and they were leaning on it. And that's difficult to win when you're just trying to trust your running game and your running game's delivering nada.
Yeah, and it's also difficult to win when Josh Allen is out there doing Josh Allen things. I mean, the 4th and 1 play where the Broncos defense had him dead to rights, and he just slings it to the back of the end zone, and then you see just one of the most unbelievable touchdown catches of this year's playoffs, where, 4th and 1, a lot of teams think, let's just run the ball, or let's have Josh Boot out and run the ball, or let's do a QB sneak, whatever. What you don't do is have your quarterback run around for 7 seconds, fling it 40 yards downfield in the air.
To a running back.
Yeah, to a running back in the back of the end zone who just makes a spectacular catch. And that's it. When Josh Allen starts playing like that, you're just not going to win. As you said, you can't have that expectation that you're going to hold the Bills to under even 20 points. So I think the fact that the Broncos held the Bills to 10 points at halftime was probably a disservice to Peyton, because he felt like they could win a low-scoring battle, when in fact that was not going to happen. And he kind of seemed like neutered his own offense. And I feel like the Broncos could have made this interesting, but the Bills were never going to lose this game.
Yeah, and he had to know that points were coming, because they never got to Allen. Like, they could not pressure Allen in that game. 9 pressures on only 32 dropbacks, according to PFF. And their usage of that 6th offensive lineman, Alec Anderson, like, they really leaned on that Denver Broncos front. And if you're scoring the matchup of that O-line of the Buffalo Bills versus the Denver Broncos defensive line, it was one of the most resounding victories in the trenches of any matchup this postseason, that we saw over the weekend. They dominated one of the best defensive lines in football. They had a great plan to do so. They said, you guys are all shrimps, no offense, but like, they are undersized. They are trying to, not shrimps compared to me, shrimps compared to NFL defensive linemen. And they try to create chaos. And all they were doing was doubles up front and saying, we will move you off the football more often than not. And they won that matchup. And that's where this game was basically decided, in my opinion.
Yep. And as you said, look, the Broncos winning that game with the most sacks during the regular season. The Bills gave up the fewest sacks. So that was always going to be the biggest matchup, was going to be in the trenches. And the Bills offensive line just beat up the Broncos front 7. And that was it. I mean, once the Broncos, they did get a couple of sacks, but they just couldn't get any consistent pressure. And if you're not pressuring Josh Allen, he's going to destroy you. And that's what happens. So that's Josh Allen is that good. And if you're not going to pressure him, you're just going to lose by 24.
Win now sets up for a big heavyweight matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, because on Saturday night, what was supposed to be, I think we bet on Thursday which game would have the biggest ratings of the bunch. No, we bet last weekend, right? Which game would have the biggest ratings of the bunch? Did we do this?
Yeah, which would be the most watchable or the most entertaining?
Which would be the most watched. And Steelers Ravens was one we thought would have been the most watched in terms of just pure viewers. Okay, it was earlier in the week. It wasn't with you. We did the most entertaining ones, and it was not high up there. And it lived up to that billing, because this one was over at halftime. Basically, for all intents and purposes, 21-0. The Steelers came out about as flat as can be, and the Ravens racked up 299 yards on 50 carries. We asked, how would they adjust to not having Zay Flowers? By having 50 carries, only 8 targets to wide receivers in that game, and just saying, we're going to run the ball down your throats. And well, they did it incredibly effectively.
Yeah, it really felt like John Harbaugh went into Todd Monken's office last week, popped in some film from the AFC Championship game last season, and said, hey, see this, man? We're not doing any of this. This only giving the running back 6 carries. We're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball. And then when you decide to finally try and stop the run, we'll let Lamar throw a few times. And that's the Ravens' bread and butter. There's no reason to ever get away from that, especially when you have Derrick Henry back there. So, I mean, the Ravens offense looked exactly like it's looked all season. It's firing on all cylinders. They're playing great football right now. And when Derrick Henry is just plowing people over, there's nothing for a defense to do, because you can't put everybody up and try and stop Derrick Henry, because Lamar Jackson's just so good. He's become such a good passer this year. He's just going to pick you apart. So if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm not even sure the smartest way to handle trying to stop them. You have to have an offense. I think getting them behind, like go up 7-0, go up 10-0. A team like the Chiefs can pull that off to get them out of their game plan. But this is not an easy offense to stop. And obviously the Steelers know that well because they couldn't stop it at all this season, except for kind of in that one game where Justin Tucker missed a couple field goals, the 18-16 game.
Yeah, this Ravens offense, they just, even without Zay Flowers, it's like they still have Rashad Bateman, and he catches a touchdown in this game. They still have 2 tight ends that are probably both top 10 tight ends in the NFL. Like, they have options still. And you do have to focus so much on the run game. Like, you do have to basically pick your poison of where do I want to put all my numbers. And they will probably have you in a mismatch of wherever you're not putting your numbers, unfortunately. And for Steelers defense, that's, it's obviously not been playing great of late. A lot of that's because they've been playing a lot of good offenses of late, but it's still a very talented defense. And they made them look not very talented in that first half. They made them look like child's play more often than not. So that's why I say this Ravens-Bills matchup is really a heavyweight matchup. And to me, probably the top 2 teams in the AFC, if I'm just like being honest right now. Obviously, Chiefs have the easiest road, but those 2 teams are stacked at this moment in time. And their OCs are both dialing up at a really high level. Joe Brady for the Bills, Todd Monken for the Ravens. They are putting on master classes of how you utilize mobile, dynamic quarterbacks at the NFL level and really put defenses in a pickle on a week in, week out basis.
Yeah, we'll be debating Bills, Ravens all week, obviously. But it's going to be interesting because that first meeting, the Ravens were just 10 times better than the Bills. And I know the Bills were dealing with a few injuries at that time, but 35-10 is 35-10. They couldn't stop Derrick Henry. They couldn't stop Lamar Jackson. And so I don't know. I don't know if the Bills have gotten 25 points better. Renner, I don't know, man. 35-10, that's a beatdown.
It was, and it really was the first time. But this one, it's playoff Lamar, and it's in Buffalo. So, hey, we'll see if that any of those factors play in the Bills' favor.
And by the way, Ravens-Bills is on CBS. So,
company man, there we go.
It's our game. Last week when we were ranking the games last week, we ranked Texans, Chargers, and Bills, Broncos at the bottom, and we were like, put the CBS game. This week, CBS games would be at the top.
CBS number 1.
Yes.
CBS is number 1.
Number 1.
Speaking of, though, the difference going from, and I can say this because they're not CBS products, but going from the broadcast team of the afternoon game on Fox to the night game on NBC was like, it was like watching like one of like the C teams versus like it was just night and day. Just the Brady broadcasts are just, I just can't believe he's doing the Super Bowl this year because he brings the most basic ground level analysis, and it's almost hard to fathom that a Hall of Fame quarterback doesn't even try to get into the weeds. He just like gives pure like reactionary takes. Like, oh, we threw left there, could have thrown right, but he went left. It's like, what?
And it is interesting to see what he's going to do because obviously, as the part owner of the Raiders, if you're going to play a part in hiring a head coach and possibly drafting a quarterback, that's a lot of parts to be playing with also being an announcer. I don't think it would be crazy if he steps down after a year or 2, but
I think we all hope he does.
I mean, this was the first time, the Packers-Eagles game was the first time I'd heard him with the volume on for 4 straight quarters. Mm-hmm. And look, it's his first year, so I'll cut him some slack, but it is, if you're Fox, you're thinking, all right, well, we have Greg Olsen's our number 2 guy, which is good in case Brady retires. So
Olsen's great. Olsen's
if
tremendous.
If Brady steps down, we'll just bump Greg up to 1 and we'll be back where we were 2 years ago.
Let us hope. Let us hope Brady takes an active role in that Raiders front office for a number of reasons, not just his announcing. All right, let's get to Chargers, Texans, the opener of this playoff weekend. It was pretty gross. Let's be real. Justin Herbert, 4 picks. He goes 14 of 32, 242 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. Of those 242 yards, 197 of those went to Ladd McConkey. that doesn't show you the talent deficiency that is the Chargers receiving room outside of Ladd McConkey. Well, and you haven't really been paying attention to the Los Angeles Chargers this season. But I do think this Houston Texans team, at least this Houston Texans defense, is maybe getting a little bit slept on because they are stacked with like playmakers, guys that change games, sort of guys that, you know, when it comes to the postseason and you get their best is scary sort of guys, like a Danielle Hunter, like a Derek Stingley, who was our Captain Morgan Captain of the Week, like a Will Anderson. So I do think that Texans-Chiefs matchup is going to be fun, but this one was not too fun. It was kind of just, it was kind of a mix of both bad offense and good defense, but it trended more towards the bad offense, in my opinion.
Well, I think going into this game, nobody knew what to make of the Texans just because of the way they finished the season. We all remember the Christmas Day beatdown. The Ravens win 31-2. And you're thinking, is this the team? How is this team going in the playoffs? Why does AFC South get a playoff team? And so I think most people picked the Chargers to win just because of how the Texans looked to end the year. But yeah, so did I. But you look at what the Texans did throughout the course of the season. They beat Buffalo. They went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs 4 days before that loss to the Ravens. I mean, the game with the Chiefs was 24-19 in the fourth quarter. The final score was 27-19. It was a one-score game the entire way through. And like you said, their defense is so good. I think they're going to be able to go and play with the Chiefs. It's just a matter of whether C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, whether those guys can come up with the big offensive plays they're going to need like they did in this game. But I think the crazy thing about this game is that a quarter and a half into it, it felt like the Chargers were going to win 51-0. It was, I mean, I remember.
Biggest turnaround of any game this weekend.
Insane. I mean, there was C.J. Stroud threw an interception early in the second quarter. This is the second quarter, and it's 6-0. And I'm thinking, this is it. This is the final nail in the coffin. The Chargers have the chance to put the nail in the coffin here. But then Justin Herbert takes the hammer and the nail and hits it in their own foot instead of in the coffin, because then he throws an interception like 2 plays later, and then all hell breaks loose. And instead of leading at halftime, you're down 10-6. I don't even know how that was even like I'm just going through this whole game in my mind. How did the Texans go from trailing 6-0 to up 10-6 in a span of just a few minutes? So it was a wild game. You had the C.J. Stroud fumble snap. They turned into a huge play.
Well, that was the change. That was it right there. Because there was 2 minutes and 24 seconds left on that play, and they were down 6-0. And he literally just like, it wasn't a bad snap. That thing just went through his hands. And you're thinking, if you're a Texans fan right there, you're like, we didn't even show up, right? You expect that play probably before he even threw it. You're like, well, it's not our game, right? You're just like thinking like, this is the type of day it's going to be. Scrambles, Xavier Hutchinson, 34 yards. And all of a sudden, like, they're back like that. They go down. Nico Collins touchdown, Kaimi Fairbairn field goal before half. All of a sudden, they are up after one of the ugliest first halves. Stroud could have thrown another pick in that first half, throwing right to Diane Henley. He had another one, I believe, a little later in that game to Derwin James that was originally called the pick, called back. Like, it was not good from either quarterback in this game. But that play right there, from then on, it seemed like the Texans had the upper hand and the Chargers were the ones reeling.
That felt like their offensive announcement that, hey, we're here, we can move the ball on this team. But then you look at the second half and you're thinking the Texans are in total control. Then Joe Mixon goes out and fumbles the ball on the third or fourth play of the half. And now the Chargers have it in Texans territory. And you're thinking, my God, they scored a touchdown here. They're right back in control. And then they had a failed 4th and 2 on that possession. And so that kind of felt to me the difference. The Chargers got 2 turnovers in Houston territory. Did not capitalize on either, didn't even get a field goal out of either turnover. And once the Texans defense made that 4th and 2 stop early in the third quarter, that's when it felt like, all right, this one feels pretty over because the Chargers can't do anything anymore. So it was ugly.
In honor of all the Justin Herbert apologists out there on Twitter, I wanted to power rank the impressiveness of all of his interceptions because it's Justin Herbert. If he throws a pick, it's not his fault. The number one most impressive one was the throw to Will Dissly, which truly was not his fault. That one hit Will Dissly right in the hands. He should have caught that. Not his fault. Number 2, Ladd McConkey. High. Ladd got hands on it. Sheer fault. you know, you got to realize you're throwing to a 5'11" white guy. He's not like, he ain't going up for a rebound. He's got to know that. Third most impressive pick, testing Derek Stingley with 2 minutes, 55 seconds left in the fourth quarter. I'm not testing Derek Stingley. He already got one on you. He is, you know, on a downfield go route, probably looking elsewhere. The worst one was easily one, targeting Quentin Johnston at any point down the football field with those corners in that game. But two, underthrowing a corner route from the opposite hash. Herbo, that's not your game. And I think the last two picks that I mentioned there really highlighted Herbert's biggest weakness, because a lot of people like to pretend like he's solely a product of a bad offense coordinator and bad talent around him. But he does not throw anything but lasers. He is why you worry about quarterbacks that just throw lasers, because he can't layer in that go ball where his receiver actually had a step on Stingley, but he couldn't layer in. Quinn Johnson actually had a few steps on Kamari Lassiter, but he throws with no arc on those go balls. And so they come in, and if the receiver or DB just gets up a little bit, he can pick those off. So unfortunately, Justin Herbert, not his best outing, but if you're the Chargers, like, you do still need to put some talent around him. Their receiving position is pretty rough outside of that.
Anything, literally anything. If your leading receiver is Ladd McConkey, a rookie, look, Ladd McConkey played great this year. I don't want to take anything away from Ladd McConkey, but that means your quarterback has zero help. So that's Chargers put that on your to-do list for the offseason. Go find some wide receivers. You got rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and then did not have any plan to replace anyone. So that didn't work out so well for you in the playoffs.
Yeah, did not. All right, let's get to the last story here of our 6 points. Mike Vrabel, new head coach of the New England Patriots. I think this was always going to happen after the Jerod Mayo firing. Like, this was why they fired Jerod Mayo in the first place, is because they wanted Mike Vrabel. What are your thoughts, initial thoughts to this hire, even though we don't know any OC or DC hires yet?
Look, I live in Nashville. I have had a front row seat to what Mike Vrabel did with the Tennessee Titans. So I absolutely love this hire for the Patriots. I think Vrabel was probably one of the most underrated coaches until he won Coach of the Year, because I don't think you can be underrated after that, right? You're just properly rated at that point. But we're talking about, he made it to the AFC title game in 2019 with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. That's impressive. How do you get even more impressive? He got the #1 overall seed in 2021 with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. And that was in a year where Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow all existed. This wasn't like those guys got injured or something happened. No, the Titans got the #1 seed in a stacked AFC, and it was because Vrabel went out with the Belichickian game plans of just a defensive mastermind, and all he loves just these slugfests. He doesn't mind winning a game 19-16. That's the Mike Vrabel style. And now that he's going to have a possible franchise quarterback, I think he could do wonders in New England. So I think this is a fantastic hire. Maybe the process of calling up Pep Hamilton and saying, hey, man, can you come in for an interview so we can get Mike Vrabel hired? Maybe a little shady, but I do think this is a fantastic hire, and I think Vrabel will do well there.
Yeah. Anyone can go sign Tannehill right now. Tannehill's still available. He's not that old. He's as old as Russell Wilson. So
that's right.
The fact that he got a 1 seed and went to the AFC Championship with him, a guy who's truly still available, is amazing. To me, this feels a lot like the Chargers pairing Herbert, though, with Jim Harbaugh, where this may not be the best thing for Drake May's like numbers. You know, if you have him in fantasy or dynasty, this probably isn't a great hire for you. He's probably not going to put up all world numbers, but this is probably the best thing for the Patriots win-loss record. You know, you saw the Chargers win double-digit games, get to the playoffs after having a top 5 pick last year. I think, not to say you can see a similar turnaround in New England, because I think their cupboard's a lot more bare than the Los Angeles Chargers was, but you'll see a big turnaround. He's going to get the most out of them, and he actually has now a guy who I think we would call a franchise quarterback. I don't think we ever were truly referring to Ryan Tannehill as a franchise quarterback. He was fun, but it was never like the Tennessee Titans were fully all in on Ryan Tannehill until, you know, he said, I'm going to retire, which obviously they weren't. He still hasn't retired, and he's out in the street right now. So love the hire for the Pats. And I think this was always, you know, when Drake May turned out to be good, they were always like, shoot, we couldn't get the best head coaching hire last session. Now I think we can. And so that's probably why they fired Rod Mayer in the first place. But I'll hold my full analysis until I get an OCDC hire, because I think that's going to be very important for him.
And real quick, Renner, 3-2 against Patrick Mahomes while he was the coach of the Titans. And there's no reason a Titans team should have ever been beating Patrick Mahomes' Kansas City Chiefs team. And then from the 2020 to 2022 seasons, 2-1 against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, who he will now be seeing twice a year. So whatever it is, he knows how to slow down these superstar quarterbacks. He's the one guy. He's their kryptonite. So it'll be interesting to see how he does defensively in the AFC East.
That's pretty important, facing those two. If you're slowing those two down, if you're in the AFC, I would say that might be helpful to your job description. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to go for 2 and do a little Monday Night Football look ahead right after this.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance, but you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right. Our parting shots from the Wildcard Weekend. Breech, what you got?
All right. Here I go, Mike. I don't want to pile on Steelers fans because they've been going through a lot for the last, 8 years because they haven't won a playoff game? They do. They do. All I see is our tweets where they're just complaining about how bad Mike Tomlin is. We saw that Mike Tomlin has now lost 7 straight playoffs games. That is the second longest playoff losing streak in NFL history. Trailing only my guy, Marvin Lewis. Well, guess what? Marvin Lewis was out of a job a couple years after losing his 7th straight playoff game. Marty Schottenheimer lost 6 straight. That's Tomlin tied him. Well, Marty Schottenheimer went 14-2 with the Chargers, lost a playoff game out of a job. Jim Mora Sr., we see him on this list, lost 2 playoff games with Peyton Manning's Colts as the head coach in Indy, was quickly out of a job a year after that 6th playoff loss. So you are getting the point where the Steelers have an issue. Look, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. We all know that. That's very impressive. So either their issue is that their general manager in the front office isn't giving him enough talent to win, or in that case, then he's been doing a great job coaching, or he's not doing a good job coaching and they can't win in the playoffs. Well, the Rudies need to decide which one of those is the issues and fix it. So if the issue is that the front office isn't giving him the talent, then you need to make a change at general manager. If the issue is you don't think Mike Tomlin can get you out of the wild card round anymore, then you need to make a change at head coach. But it does feel like, I know this franchise loathes change more than any other franchise, but I think they need to do something this offseason to rock the boat.
I don't disagree. And there were 2 people that I saw have really good takes on this that I want to shout out to. One was Kyle Brandt on NFL Network, I believe, is where it was. He basically went on this rant saying, getting to the playoffs is great, but you're a Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. Like, they have a little bit of a different standard than everyone else. And it's winning playoff games, right? Like, it's winning it. And so 8 years of not winning is just not the standard of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't care that you get there every year. It's great that you do, but their standard is just a little higher. They are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their standard isn't what the Cincinnati Bengals is, unfortunately. And so, not to take a shot directly at you, but it's just, that is them. And so from that perspective, they have every right to be upset with Mike Tomlin. And the other one was from my good buddy, John Ledyard. I'm actually not even sure. Got to shout out where he works at right now, but John Ledyard on Twitter, he said that there's no, Mike Tomlin does a great job of getting guys to play at their best, getting social cohesion from players who maybe aren't the best at being socially cohesive. But there is nothing from an X's and O's perspective that he's doing on a football field, offensively or defensively, with the coordinators he's had over the past decade, that inspires any confidence that things will change going forward, that they are not doing stuff schematically innovative on either side of the ball. And he has not picked out head coaches or assistant coaches that are doing anything that would inspire him, going forward in that regard. And that's the way of the world, unfortunately, in the NFL, is that it's the Liam Cohen's, the Brian Flores, it's guys that are bringing new stuff to the table that bleed, that are out at the forefront And so if you can't be on the bleeding edge schematically, you're going to look like the Pittsburgh Steelers of the past decade, unfortunately. And it's a fair critique. All right, my parting shot. And this one's actually going to be semi-Packers related.
Uh-oh.
Let's get rid of the 7th seed. We've had it now for 5 years. Breech. Do you know how many times the 7th seed's won in those 5 years?
Not many.
Once.
Ooh.
One time the 7th seed's won in 5 years. That's 10 games. They've won one of them. It was the Packers last year against the Cowboys, and they didn't win the next round. 7th seed was shoehorned in from a pure money draw perspective. It's made Week 18 less interesting because fewer teams are on the precipice. Think about how great Week 18 would have been this year if the Packers were fighting for their lives against the Commanders instead of knowing they were going to get in and benching their guys in the second half and Jordan Love doesn't come back in. It would have been way more interesting. And it gives these teams who are, in my opinion, and why I say it's semi-Packers related, is because it gives this Packers team that I don't think has been that good, right? It's been a fine team, but I don't think it's been like that good. They wouldn't have been playoff teams the last 2 years if we didn't have the 7th seed. There would be a completely different narrative around Jordan Love, the receivers, Matt LaFleur, if this team had missed the playoffs last year and missed the playoffs this year. It just would. So unfortunately, I don't think the 7th seed has added any intrigue. Those 7-2 matchups more often than not had been blowouts. Shoot, even the time the Packers won as the 7th seed, it was a blowout against the Cowboys. But we don't need more blowouts in the playoffs. It sours leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. The 2 seed has done enough, in my opinion, to get a bye. Let's go back to the normal wild card, not the super wild card. I think we've all had enough of the money grab. That's the one place we can all afford to cut. One game, or I guess 2 games, we can afford to cut at NFL. It's not that big a deal.
Well, let me ask you this, Renner. How would you feel about possibly reseeding, or the seeds are differently, where the division winners still get in, but the home games go to the teams with the top 4 records? So like this year, obviously what I'm saying, where
so that was
that's what Jonathan Jones reported on Saturday,
yes,
that the NFL might think about that. And if that was in place this year, the Lions, Eagles, Vikings, and Commanders would have been your home teams.
The home teams. See, I still like then you're basically just saying division is purely for
no, because you still get the playoff spot. You still get a free playoff spot to win your division.
But it's basically just saying your division's solely for like your scheduling purposes. Winning a division has nowhere near the cachet if you don't get a home game out of it. So I don't necessarily love that. I still think winning your division should carry some weight when it comes to postseason, even if it's just a home game. But yeah, so I think they should get the home game. But
there's a little bit of luck involved because the Packers won 11 games. That would have been enough to win 3 other divisions this year, but because they got
Vikings
stuck.
Are the ones
the Vikings would have
that's
won.
Who's complaining right now.
Every division. So
if we're reseeding, the idea I always love for is drafting. If we're looking for another money avenue for the NFL, you have the Lions draft now who they want to play from these teams.
Yes.
And then you have like a televised event. The Lions are up there. They draft who they want to play. And then the 2 seeds up there, they draft who they want to play. I think that's the way we do it, is that you don't just necessarily get stuck with playing, the team whose record aligns up with yours. If like one of the quarterbacks got hurt and they're an easier matchup, you should be able to pick the easier matchup, in my opinion.
And what's hilarious is in the AFC, I think we got what we got, because if that was in place, the Chiefs would have picked the Texans, yes, and then you would have been left over with Ravens, Bills.
That one worked out, but we'll see how.
I love it.
The
Talk to Roger Goodell. Get that done, Renner.
Needs to happen. All right, let's get to Monday Night Football. Vikings-Rams. Game is moved to Arizona. Could this actually be more of a home field advantage for the Rams than their normal home field advantage? I'm obviously joking, but I don't think this matters. Does this matter how much does this matter for the Los Angeles Rams trying to pull off this upset?
I think it's interesting because you have no idea what the crowd is going to look like, as far as, is it going to be like 50-50? I know they were saying that Rams fans went out and bought about 35,000 tickets or whatever, but then they might sell those on the secondary market because it's not cheap to get from LA to Arizona on 1 week's notice. That's round trip flights. We're going for like $600. Or you can drive, and that's not an exciting drive, and it's a long drive. I do think it'll probably be a minor home field advantage, but I think the one advantage for the Rams is that they're used to playing in the stadium. So they play in it every single year. Yeah. They're 9-1 there, and they're past 10 games. So they're kind of familiar with State Farm Stadium. And remember, the Super Bowl was there. The field was all slippery and crazy. And so it is nice to have been there if you're a team and be familiar with it. I think the Vikings have only played there twice since 2015. So at least the familiarity, I think, will help a little bit, even if they don't actually have home field advantage anymore.
We got my pick on the show Thursday. I went Vikings. Who you got for this one?
Oh, I'm going to go Rams. I'm going against you, Renner. And I'm not just saying it to go against you.
I just hope it's a good one because, again, Wildcard Weekend didn't live up to the hype. It's not usually the best weekend's always a divisional round weekend, in my opinion. But Wildcard Weekend has been good of late. And this one, kind of a meh. So Vikings-Rams, save us on Monday night. We'll be locked in, and we'll be back on Tuesday doing Pete's power rankings, but we're not going to be power ranking. We're going to be talking playoffs with Pete. Until then, keep pushing.